We move on into the Avdiivka front. At the Avdiivka front, the Russian Avdiivka offensive continues despite the capture of Avdiivka, with fighting reported at Badaichi, Stepove, towards Olivka, towards Tonenki, at Zhivany, at Povomaisky don't have, at Nevelsky. Ukrainian forces attack at Novobakhmutivka. I think I'm not sure if Badaichi, I can't see. At Zhivany, Tonenki, at Povomaisky. And let's see. Oh, yeah. And also at Badaichi. So this is the strategic situation over at the Avdiivka front. And there's nothing much to talk about in the south. In the center part, as I mentioned in the previous report, multiple previous reports, this area here is the weak spot, because this is the soft belly. Ukrainian strong lines is over in this area at Stepove, as well as Povomaisky and Nevelsky. And even in the strong lines, they are getting pushed back by the Russian forces already. They kept losing ground. So not to mention this, so this is also a strong point. So not to mention this soft spot that the Russians are penetrating through, that is taking advantage of, and which is why we see the biggest frontline change is over in this soft spot. And in this soft spot, Russian forces have taken more grounds on the eastern part of Olivka. They are penetrating and going to punch through. They're going to attack from two sides, from the southeast and the northeast towards Olivka. The Russian push towards the northern part of Tonenki spook the Ukrainian forces that is holding up in the north of Zhivany. They run away, allowing the Russian forces to storm in and conquer Zhivany. Based on Russian sources also says that they are attacking from the south of Tonenki, and they are going to hit Tonenki from the south as well. Gray zones have already penetrated into the southeastern part of Tonenki, which means that there is already possibility that the Russians are already starting to storm Tonenki. The same goes for Olivka. The Russian forces may have already started their battle of Olivka already. So all these frontline changes are significant, and the Ukrainians are struggling to deal with this. This is the first line of defense after Avdiivka city, and this first line of defense is collapsing super fast. After the initial, I would say success by the Ukrainian forces to hold this line. What happened to to hold this line over at Lashtoshkiny, because Lashtoshkiny actually held 2-3 days more than I thought it would. I thought it would collapse rather fast. It did not. The Ukrainian forces actually managed to hold the Russian forces there for a little while, but once this line broke, everything behind seems to lack and fortifications. It looks like the Ukrainians have not been working hard enough to create insurance, create more lines of defenses, heavy entrenchment and fortifications to prepare for a possibility of a Russian breakthrough. If you look at the Russians are very paranoid. If you look at the line of defense over at Zaporizhia, and in fact I didn't even draw the ones over at Donetsk or Bakhmut front, it's all super thick. They are talking about like kilometers deep of entrenchments, and the Ukrainians seems to don't have that, and that is a surprise. Like this penetration is much faster than what the Ukrainian counteroffensive has done in the direction of Robotyne, which shows a little bit of complacency from the Ukrainians. To be fair, not to be fair, to be nice. So anyway, yeah, this is the situation over at this Avdiivka front, and in the Stepove region, this is also a symbol of what is currently happening across the entire front line. As I mentioned before, this is actually a very strong line. Stepove line have held very well against the Russians for months and months, and the Russian forces cannot conquer Stepove. They just cannot break through. They tried many times. Many people died. Many equipment was destroyed. The Ukrainians constantly, put pressure on the Russians to keep them back. However, suddenly we have this sudden breakthrough where the Russian forces storm past Stepove and head all the way to the south eastern part of Badaichi and capture more tree lines around this area here. and the Ukrainian forces is now forced into defending Badaichi, and this is, I believe, the last line of defense before everything soft behind. So if Badaichi fall, which I believe might be pretty fast, given the air superiority of the Russians, yeah, I think the Russians would storm through within a few days, and then the battle will go to Semenivka, and the Russians will start to fan out from Badaichi, and this is going to be a massive disaster. But if you support Ukraine, you have to give up the idea that the Ukrainians can hold this line. This line seems to be almost gone. I think this is hopeless at this moment. The next line of defense you should depend on is over here, along this river to Kalivka and everything. So there's a series of heavy fortifications around here. So this is where I believe you should put your hopes on. I think the Ukrainians may not be able to hold on all these areas for much longer. Of course, this distance for the Russians to capture might still be maybe a month away to 2-3 months possible, because war can be quite slow. But in the grand scale of things, I believe the next line of defense is going to be here, the next firm line. And if I'm Ukrainian commander, this is where I'm going to put my focus right now. The distance between this to the front line is around 10 kilometers. So this is where you should quickly build your defenses. And this line stretches all the way down to Korokhove, which is one of the major forward operating base for the Ukrainians. So it makes sense because Krasnohorivka is compromised as well. So this is where the Ukrainians have to put the next line of defense and really start to build it up right now. Like now, they have to build it now because there's no more time. So the window of opportunity to do constructions so near to the front line, 10 kilometers is really near, is within artillery range. You have to do it right now. If they don't do it, then the Russians are going to have one hell of a PR victory, and it's going to collapse Western support. So this is something to note. Talking about Western support, there is some crazy claims about coming out from France, talking about they are considering sending NATO troops into Ukraine. I can 100% tell you, Russia is going to announce and say that they're going to prioritize target these NATO soldiers. If they step into Ukraine, they will be priority target. They will be missile strike and take out immediately first. So to discourage the NATO from doing more deployments into Ukraine. So it's just like the foreign fighter situation where early in the war, the Russians made a statement by missile striking one of the NATO bases in Ukraine that was housing all these foreign fighters to train them. In a single barrage, hundreds of foreign fighters died, and many of them just gave up. They don't even want to fight because they were so far away from the front line. They thought they were safe. So the same thing goes for the NATO troops, and I can tell you, NATO troops are no difference from the Ukrainian troops. Not much difference. No amount of training are going to make you bulletproof, shell-proof. You still die when a bullet hits you. It's just that you have better training, so you know what to do. But it doesn't make you shell-proof. Missile strike will still kill you. So